Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. So sometimes when, we come new to Dhamma, we come new to the path of practice and we start learning about the path of practice, sometimes, it can seem really overwhelming. It can seem like a whole bunch of stuff and really confusing. But at other times, it can feel the exact opposite. It can feel very simple, very easy, very step by step. And in some schools of Theravada Buddhism, um, they've developed certain meditation techniques, and they really, present it this way. It's a very easy do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, and boom, you'll be enlightened. And this can be very appealing. A lot of people are very like goal oriented. I want it very much like a step ladder, stairs, do this, very clearly spelled out for us. But when the Buddha, taught the way he set it up, he didn't create a meditation guide, just, wrote a book and, follow it like this. The teachings of the Buddha, they're very vast. It's a huge collection of teachings and discourses from the Buddha. And they deal with a bunch of different topics and stuff because a lot of other things can happen in life, even though, uh, we may see, okay, I do this and this and this, and you're moving along and things feel like they're going well, and then something can happen and it can completely derail us. So we have to know how to deal with these different things when they come up. I remember once um, when I was a Prakhour novice, there was this one senior monk from Australia, and he was talking about this. He was saying he um, knew these lay people who practiced together. It was a couple, they were married, and they had been practicing for many, many years. And then, and I think they may have even had like a bit of a meditation group together or a bit of a center or something going on. And then the husband had an affair. He met another lady, took off, went to another country, and completely left his wife. And she was absolutely devastated by this. And she went to this senior monk who was telling us this story, and was like, I don't know what to do. I've been practicing for so many years, and I don't know how to deal with this, because she had just been practicing like a very, very, very structured um, technique for the meditation. So, he gave her, advice and helped her with this and helped her through this. So this is something which, can happen in our practice, and in our lives, even though when things feel like they're going very well, it's like Lumpur Cha said, it's my nay, it's not certain. All of a sudden things can change. And we have to be, ready for these changes and ready to learn how to deal with these different situations, these different things that can come up. So sometimes, they can come up be some kind of external circumstances. So for example, like the extreme example just of the affair, something like that. It can be, health related. We can get an illness, we can have an accident, it can be, our job all of a sudden getting fired. But sometimes they can also be internal, in our own minds, in our own hearts. We feel that things are going very well. We feel like practice is going well, and it feels like, yeah, I'm really getting this. And then all of a sudden, some kind of strong mind state comes up, sometimes strong emotion that we didn't even realize was still down there. So it might be some anger, some greed, some delusion, all these different things can come up. So we have to learn um, how to deal with these things. So Lumpur Tongrat, who was one of the teachers of Lumpur Cha, so after when Lumpur Cha went to go stay with Lumpur Mun, who was like the founder of the modern Thai forest tradition, he stayed with him for a few days, but then Lumpur Mun sent him on to stay with these two different teachers. One of them was Lumpur Ginnery, and the other one was Lumpur Tongrat. And actually, during my second rains retreat as a monk, I got to stay at Lumpur Tongrat's monastery, or what's on the spot where his monastery was. Lumpur Tongrat's been dead for many, many decades, but the spot where his monastery was. And Lumpur Tongrat, his style, he could sometimes be a bit like the eccentric Zen teacher. So sometimes people didn't quite get him, but he was a very, very respected monk and, very Lumpur Cha's teacher. And one time he was saying, yeah, actually practicing is very easy. He said, when the kilesas, so these are the defilements like greed, hatred, delusion, and all their manifestations. So he was like, when the kilesas hit high, we duck. When the kilesas hit low, we jump. So, so it's learning to where they come. We learn to deal with it. We learn to work with it, and we have to do that with life as well too. When circumstances of life hit high, we duck. When they hit low, we jump. So we've got to learn to deal with these different circumstances because, as the Buddha said, all things are impermanent. All conditioned things are impermanent. They're always changing. And even though a lot of them, we'd like to stay the same. We want it to always be like this. It's always in a state of flux, in a state of change. And so we have to be able to learn to work with that. And the Buddha, he talked about these things which are always changing and that, we're very much chasing after going away. And he called this one set of them, he called the eight worldly winds. So they're broken up into four different pairs. So there's praise and blame, fame and obscurity, gain and loss, and pleasure and pain. So these are constantly going back and forth between these. And we when we're living our worldly lives, and just the natural instinct of us is we go towards the positive ones for that. So we go towards wanting praise, we go towards wanting fame, wanting gains, wanting pleasurable feelings, and we go away from the others, the more negative aspects of it, or we view as the negative aspects. So go away from criticism or blame, move away from obscurity, moving away from loss. We want to go away from pain. But when we have to be able to work with these and see these in our lives because it's constantly changing. So be able to deal with certain things, these in our lives. So one of the ones that um, this one set of them, praise and blame or criticism, these are things that a lot of times, we really, really want in our lives. But we can't guarantee them and they don't give any lasting happiness. So you see, you do something good at work and you really want that praise for it, chasing that praise. Oh, I hope he tells me I did a good job. And then if you don't get it, you're like, oh, I can't believe I did all this work and he didn't even say thank you. He didn't even say good work. And we suffer over that. And so we have to, see this as what it is. It's just a condition, and it's going to change. But the other one for this set, which I think a lot of people have a lot of difficulties with, is the blame or criticism. And I think this is something a lot of people have difficulties dealing with in their lives. And when we are criticized, say we've done something, we think we've done something good, and then someone criticizes us for that, it feels very personal. It feels very, can feel very painful. You can feel like contracted, like, what, I can't believe he said that, and again, it feels like it's just happening to us, but this experience of being criticized, of being blamed, this is a universal experience that all people go through, no matter what. The Buddha went through it as well. Um, there's this story from the Dhammapada commentary. It's one I really, really like. And so the Dhammapada is this book, the set of teachings from the Buddha of these short verses. And then the commentaries, which were written hundreds of years later, gave these little background stories to each of these different teachings. And some of them are really great. So there's this one story of this layman, and his name is Atula. And he kind of was a bit, it seems from the story like he was a bit of like a lay teacher. He had this group of other lay people who were into Dhamma, practicing Dhamma as well. So one day he took this group of lay people to the monastery to listen to some Dhamma. So they go into the monastery and they find the Venerable Revata, and they pay respects to him and sit down and to listen to some Dhamma. But Venerable Revata, he's this, really austere forest monk, and he's someone who really likes silence, doesn't like talking a lot. So he just sits there quietly, doesn't say a word. So after a while, this layman Atula, gets kind of irritated by this and annoyed and angry about this, that, Atula's not, sorry, Revata's not saying anything. So after a while, him and his group, they pay respects to Revata. They get up and go, and they go find another monk to listen to some Dhamma from. And then they go find the Venerable Sariputta, and they pay respects to him. And the layman Atula starts telling Sariputta what happened. He's like, yeah, we came to the monastery. We wanted to hear some Dhamma, and we went to listen to some Dhamma from Venerable Revata, and he didn't say a word. We just sat there. And so Venerable Sariputta, who is the Buddha's foremost disciple in wisdom, he gives them a Dhamma talk, but he gives them a really, really long Dhamma talk. And it's all about like Abhidhamma, which is the really high teachings of the Buddha. So this is the really high like stuff. And it's very difficult to understand. And listening to this long Dhamma talk on Abhidhamma, this layman Atula, he got irritated again. He got annoyed. He was unhappy with that. And he's thinking, oh, Venerable Sariputta, he's just talking on and all this stuff. It's really high. It's really difficult to understand. I just can't see the practical value of this in my daily life. I can't see how this is going to be useful to me in my daily life. So finally, when the Dhamma talk was finished, they pay respects, and they go look for another monk to listen to a Dhamma talk from. And they find the Venerable Ananda, and they pay respects to him, and they sit down and they tell the Venerable Ananda about everything which has happened up to that point, with Venerable Revata and then with Venerable Sariputta. And so the Venerable Ananda gives them a Dhamma talk, and it's really good. It's really easy to understand, explained in very simple terms. It's very practical to their life, and it's teachings they can really use in their daily life. But it's short. It's just a short Dhamma talk. So Venerable Revata again, sorry, the layman Atula again is unhappy with this, and goes to see the Buddha. Finally takes his group. They go to see the Buddha. He tells everything which has happened. And then the Buddha says to him, oh Atula, it's been like this since ancient times. Those who say nothing are criticized. Those who speak a lot are criticized. And those who speak the right amount are criticized. All people are criticized. And I really love this teaching and this verse for it, because again, it's just a universal thing. We're all going to be criticized at some point, whether it's we feel we deserved it or we feel we don't do it. It's just a universal thing. Even the Buddha, he was criticized a lot, and he had people um, who really disliked him. So we're never going to be able to make everyone like us, and this is just something we're going to have to learn to work with, to learn to deal with being criticized. And so sometimes, again, when we get criticized, it's such can be such an unpleasant feeling, such a puts us on defense and stuff. And And we just shut down to whatever the criticism was. So, it can be even something like, someone who is a friend of yours, gives you a little criticism, and it could be a completely valid point. Say they pointed out you did something wrong, and then you get offended by it, and you just ruminate on it, you're just thinking and proliferating on it, and then you end up sending them like a nasty voice note or something, telling them off for criticizing you, or something like that. So we have to, when we are criticized, it's really important, first of all, to um to be open to listen to what they're saying. So Lumpur Cha, he one of his teachings, it's a very well-known one of his, was he said, well, in Thailand, to call someone a dog is a really heavy insult, right? Like that's really heavy, calling someone a dog. And he said, if someone calls you a dog, check to see if you have a tail. So it's if someone criticizes you on something, check to see if what they're saying is true. Because regardless of their intention for saying it. So even if they're saying this just specifically to hurt you, like they're trying to be malicious, they're they're trying to hurt you. But if they've pointed out something that you're doing wrong and something that you can fix, um, they, they've actually, it's beneficial. The Buddha said someone who points out our faults is like a treasure. And so even though they've tried to hurt us, it's the joke's on them. We're benefiting for it. There's something we missed, we didn't see, and now we can learn from that and benefit from that, and grow from that. And of course, if they're wrong and it's not something we did wrong, then, well, joke's on them. They got it wrong, right? And so it's important to uh to be able to reflect like that. And we can also just uh work on reflecting on, because a lot of times we want to snap back, we want to say something back, we feel hurt, we feel offended, we want to do something back, kind of get our revenge, get our justice or something like that. And it's really important for us to reflect on that. Well, what's going to happen if I do that? What's the benefit? What's the drawbacks of me doing that? And like, so if you do that, someone does point out something you've done wrong, and you criticize them back, or you say something back, or you get overly offended, um, people aren't going to want to point out your faults anymore. People aren't going to want to help you improve anymore. So when you're a monk, like living in the monastery, you have people pointing out when you do stuff wrong all the time. So it's just part of like the lifestyle. We have a lot of rules, and especially when we're new to the monastery and we're learning the rules and we're learning how to practice, a lot of people are always pointing out what we do wrong, and that's like actually, it doesn't sound nice, but it's a really beautiful part of the lifestyle of being a monk, is that we do have these people giving us honest reflection, and it really helps us grow. And the Buddha said at one time, a monk who's become unadmonishable. So no one wants to point out anything that this monk's done wrong, or he's not going to listen to anything when it's been pointed out. So the Buddha said, a monk who's unadmonishable, that's death in the holy life, because you're not going to grow, because no one's going to want to point out your faults anymore. And you can see it in your daily life. Like there may be someone at work or someone, and you're just like, even when you see him doing something wrong at work, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. I'd like to, but I know this is going to cause an issue, and so that problem doesn't get corrected, and then maybe eventually that person ends up getting fired because of that. So we want to really avoid getting into that being unadmonishable. But and so even for monks, it's interesting. We have this one rule. We have a lot of rules, but we have this specific rule about being admonished, is that not to be disrespectful when someone's pointed out a mistake we've made, in regards to our rules. And so even if they're wrong, we're not allowed to be disrespectful over that. We just have to, say, accept the admonishment. Doesn't mean we have to do what they told us to do or not do what they told us not to do, but we still have to be respectful when someone's admonishing us. And it's also It's again, it's another one of these things we can really see when someone does criticize us, or we can really use this as a way to also look at some of our attachments, look at these places where we do have maybe some kind of really strong attachment, some kind of like weak spot we didn't realize we had. So, there may be something that, you feel like things are going well, but someone says something and it criticizes you on something you've done, and it just hits that real like sensitive spot you didn't realize you had. So again, even if their intention wasn't good doing it, they've shown you something. They've shown you a part of yourself that you can work at. They've shown you this area that we can work at, that we can improve on. And so uh this being criticized, this is something which is going to happen. It happens to all of us. And, we just have to learn to grow from it, be able to turn that, what would have been a negative experience or a negative interaction, and see this as a place to practice Dhamma, see this as a place um, to grow in the Dhamma. So I'd like to offer this to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this evening.